Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May event of our 2024 SalesPad webinar series. For those who have not seen me on these webinars yet, my name is Elizabeth Morris. I'm on the marketing team here at Cavallo, and I am the event manager. We have lots of awesome webinars planned for the rest of the year, and we've had some really good ones up until this point every month. If you'd like to register for an upcoming webinar or view a past webinar, just a reminder that you can head on over to our website at www.cavallo.com/events-schedule, and you can see all those webinars. So check those out. The format for today's webinar is going to be about a 40-minute presentation followed by some time for Q&A. So feel free to ask questions at any point throughout the presentation so you don't lose your train of thought. Just use that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to get to all of them at the end, but if we don't, we will definitely make sure we follow up with you accordingly. Just a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to share the recording with colleagues or view it again at a later time. We're super excited to have Kevin Elby joining us again this month, Senior Implementation Consultant here with us at Cavallo. He's going to take us on a dive into key features and useful dashboards, so you can learn how quick reports can help you keep a pulse on the health of your company every single day. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Kevin. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself for those of you who haven't met him yet, and then he will take us through quick reports.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. So, yep, like Elizabeth said, my name is Kevin Albee. I'm a senior consultant here at Cavallo. I've been here for roughly 5.5 years now. Within that time, I've worked on and completed roughly 180 projects with different customers, ranging from all different things such as SalesPad desktop implementations, inventory manager, quick reports, reporting, just a little bit of everything. Few facts about myself. For anyone who's familiar to the Grand Rapids area, I went to college here at Grand Valley State University for 4 years. Then a few hobbies. I am very, very slowly working on writing and producing my own album. I'm really into checking out new restaurants and food in the area, which there's a lot of check out in Grand Rapids, and then just playing video games with friends and things like that. So to jump right into it, I'm going to start off with what are quick reports. So for anyone who's not already familiar with quick reports are a tool that we have in SalesPad desktop to provide a quick mechanism to create and run simple reports based on SQL queries, which is the coding language, and user input. So you can kind of think of them as the equivalent of GP smart lists. So with these quick reports, they can be created to display any information throughout your database or other databases technically, to include things or display information such as gross sales by customer, orders entered by sales reps, inventory related information, etc. So again, pretty much anything in your database that you're doing, whether that's technically in SalesPad desktop, or maybe it's more focused on the GP side of things, with quick reports, we can access that information, present that to you in kind of a grid format. But in addition to that, we can also do pivot tables. We have something called updatable quick reports. So with these reports, we can actually update records in your database directly through the report itself. And then we can also link these quick reports to things like printed form labels. So technically, you create a quick report, have maybe item information in there, list prices and things and so on. We can have that linked to an actual item label report and automatically print that out. But we'll get into more of that later on in the report and through the demo. So next question is, what do I need to create quick reports? First thing you're going to need, and most important, is the quick report module. In my experience, pretty much all customers have this, but if you find out this is something you don't have, you just want to reach out to your sales rep to talk about that further, see if there's maybe any licensing that you need to be able to have access to these menus to create and utilize these reports and these menus and functions. Next thing you're going to need is a well-defined goal. Like I said, these quick reports, they are very far-reaching in what you can accomplish with them in terms of what data you're looking at or how it's presented. So if it's your first time trying to create a quick report or come up with what you would want for a quick report, just need to kind of get a general idea of what you're looking for. So that could be what kind of fields, if you're looking for sales documents, maybe you're looking for purchase line information, and then also kind of what fields or columns you're going to want in that report, and then maybe what you want to filter it by and other things like that. Next thing you'll ideally need is a basic knowledge of SQL. Like I mentioned before, SQL is a coding language. It's kind of done on the database side of things. So SQL is just structured query language. It's not necessarily required, but it definitely makes it a lot easier when you're kind of working in creating these reports. But we do have some tools within the Quick Report editor. So if you're not as familiar with SQL, we at least give you some opportunities to still kind of get in there, figure your own way around things and get some stuff created for you. At least get you started on the right track. So next thing is, where do I find quick reports? So a lot of people might not know this, but quick reports are technically located throughout SalesPad desktop. There's one main quick report menu, which is usually we're going to see a lot of those accessed and created and configured at. But we also have quick report tabs throughout different menus in SalesPad desktop. So you can see my screenshot here in my inventory search. We technically have an item quick report tab. This is also available in things like your sales document menu or the order entry screen, customer screen, vendors, and so on. And I'll kind of show you this more later on too, but something that I was thinking with having these quick reports set up and these other specific menus outside of just the key quick report one is they can be configured here to automatically filter the data in the reports based on the record you're looking at. So for this example, I have a quick report called detailed item history, or I think just information or eval. And because it's currently clicked on that item there for 120 SDRAM, my quick report, which is looking at technically all items, is automatically filtering to that item that I currently have selected. So again, it's kind of a nice tool to filter down your data if you're looking for something a little more specific or something for data more relevant to a specific order, order, vendor, customer, etc. So I'm not going to get into all of these, but here I just have a few examples of use cases that I've run into with quick reports. So more commonly, I definitely have a lot of quick reports I've created that are kind of related around profitability. So totals and sales, sometimes that'll be grouped by things like customer, maybe item class, sales rep, project ID. So you can see I've got UDF reference there. So it's kind of a nice aspect is within SalesPad with our user defined fields or UDFs, we can always create new fields for various things throughout different business objects in SalesPad. So for example, if you have fields or something you need to track on the sales document level or maybe a customer level, and there isn't an out of the box field for that, you can use the user defined fields to create that field specific to your company's needs. And that could also get integrated and referenced in these reports. So this is something I've worked with a lot of customers where they need to have some kind of a project ID or some kind of category that they want to have reporting on. So again, I'll create maybe a project ID on the sales document. Users will start filling that out as they're maybe creating quotes or prospects or something like that. And then we can have the reports actually reference that user defined field, and we can start grouping it by that and give you summarized data or whatever makes the most amount of sense what you're looking for. Another thing I've done is serial or lot traceability reporting. So sometimes the serial numbers, you just kind of want to see where they've been fulfilled and things like that. Definitely create reports for that. Looking at open quotes by sales rep, customer class, item class. Some of the stuff you can get through other tools in SalesPad. So for example, if you wanted to look for open quotes, you could technically do that through the sales monitor. But if you wanted to kind of have it, again, this more kind of grouped and just more easily formatted for specifically what you're looking for, maybe you're kind of exporting this out. It's nice to have the quick report option. So then you have this report already set up, has all your views in the right order or all the columns and so on. And then, just various things like that. Like I said, I'm not going to go into all of them, but there's a lot of examples there, and really the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to get created. So next thing we're gonna do here is just jump right into the demo. So with this demo, I'm just going to walk through general quick report menus that I've talked about up to this point, some of the related settings and security you're going to run into, and then kind of creation and configuration of some of these different types of quick reports I've talked about as well. So let me get my SalesPad desktop here, throw that up. And here we go. So like I said, it's different menus where these are going to be utilized, but most commonly it's going to be under the reporting tab here and then quick reports. And then here we're going to have two separate tabs you're going to notice. So it's going to be the report tabs and the report files tab. So any reports or quick reports created here under the reports tab are going to be reports that are directly stored in your database. With the report files, it's a little bit different. we recognize a certain type of file type. I think it's SREPT, if I remember right. I'll actually double check here really quick. Yeah, SREPT. So essentially you'd have like a text file and you change the extension to that, and that would get recognized over here. So technically these would have all the same configurations and so on that you would see with the reports over here, but it's just another way to store. So rather than having it in the database, you could have it in a shared public drive. And that way you can kind of keep those files and store them, or sometimes I think customers like to use this as a way to control security, because maybe through their Windows authentication, only certain users have access to that folder drive, so they might not see certain files in here. I don't see it used quite as much anymore, but it's something I still run into with customers occasionally having that set up. One other thing you're going to see in here too is these highlighted gray sections, which are going to be different categories of quick reports. So you can see as you go in and create different quick reports, you can specify a category. So if you're creating a lot of them, it makes it a nice, easy way to get these categorized. So you can say like, maybe these are my sales quick reports, maybe these are my more admin related ones, and so on. So you can also go in, edit them from here, delete, copy, rename, and so on. So double check here, make sure I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. So before I get too far into the actual creation of quick reports, I'm just going to jump into some of the related security. So general tip and trick for anyone who doesn't know, if you're ever trying to find the security for a particular menu in SalesPad, usually you can right click, assuming you've got admin access, go to security, give that a second, and that'll open up the security editor menu for you, and that'll automatically filter to the menu related to that, or sorry, to the security related to that menu. So you can see over here, it's all sorts of different stuff. There's a lot of basic things kind of start off with. So just saying, if you're in the quick report menu, you have access to copy them, create, delete, and so on. That's usually one of the more relevant settings in here that might come to mind is this restricted category section. So again, as you're in your quick reports, you can set up certain categories to organize them. But if you maybe have something like an admin category and only certain users should be able to see that, what I can do is technically come in here, get that admin one and put that into this restricted category section. So that way, whatever user group that I'm setting this up for wouldn't have access to see those. So sometimes that helps out if you want to kind of keep that restricted. Then again, there's some other settings and securities, but that's going to be one of the more common ones you'll run into. But next we're going to run into just creating a simple quick report. So I can click new. I'm just going to call this test. My category, I think I already have a webinar one. That's not it. We'll just do a webinar. And then for template, there's going to be a example of kind of out of the box quick reports that we'll provide you with if you want to kind of mess with those and start around. So it's things like just bin lookup if you're set up in a GP multi-bin environment, customer activity, end of day. Usually I'll just start off with the customer item numbers. And that's just because there's usually not as much information in there. So it's kind of easy to start with that and change around. So give that a second to load here. And then here we're going to see the quick report editor. So it's going to be three main sections. The top left you're going to see is the actual quick report itself. So for example, if I'm coming over here and running, yes, customer item number test. So again, this is going to be kind of what your quick reports look like. Like I said, it's just a grid report. Usually the more standard one you're going to see. So this is just that. So as you're making changes, you can kind of see it in real time. Over the right side of the screen is we're going to have the main configuration. So again, for anyone who's more familiar with the SQL side of things, it's usually going to be your SQL statement in the middle. So here I'm just kind of selecting the data that I have presented in my quick report. And then there's some other stuff surrounding that, just kind of determining what the name of the quick report is, if there's any search fields, certain column formatting, and so on. But a lot of that's really configured down here below in these different columns. So first one we're going to get into is the properties tab. So you can see the name's already been filled out based on what I did in the previous menu. Description is kind of nice because I think in newer versions of SalesPad, we've changed this recently, where if you put in a description and save that and update the report viewer to recognize the change, it's going to put that up here. So that's kind of a nice thing. If you're creating kind of a more customized report and maybe your reports automatically filter on based certain things. So maybe you've got an open sales document report, but it's only looking at open invoices where the requested ship dates within the current month. That might be a good idea to have that in the description. So that way users running the report can have that available and have that to reference. So again, I think that's kind of newer in the last year or so. I can't remember offhand, but definitely nice. Something I've been trying to use more often. I've been creating reports for customers. The viewer name, technically you don't need to change this because it defaults to the grid port viewer, but this is also where you can set it up to create a pivot table. We'll get into that more later on. And then down here, there's some other options. So we have auto links. So one thing you're gonna notice in these quick reports, I'm just gonna throw in a new query here real quick. Oops. Oops. Let's see here. I'm just basically pulling in 3 records from our SalesPad or Cavallo open sales document view that we have. But you're going to see here, I've got a few columns that are showing up with the blue font and are underlined. So these are links essentially. So we've got different menus throughout SalesPad that are recognized with these links to automatically open them up. So you can see I've got my sales document number. So if I'm going to click that, this is automatically going to open up that sales document from this quick report. And you can see I can do that from the customer number. This is all set up, also set up to work with purchase orders, I think items, and there's some other stuff as well, but those are usually the most common. And with these to work, you just need to make sure that you have the, yep, there you go, open up for you. Just need to make sure you have the relevant fields in your quick report and that they're named as expected for what we're looking for. So for example, the customer number, all you need is the customer number to work. And we're specifically looking for it to be called customer num like that. So if you were referencing maybe the GP table and their field is actually called, I think it's like CSTNUM or something like that, in the SQL, you just need to rename that to be customer underscore num, because this, again, this is what we're looking for. And I'll mention too, as I'm kind of going through this presentation, this demo, I probably need to get a little more technical with certain things like this. So I'd just say for anyone who's maybe not as technical, just to still pay attention and focus in, but focus more on kind of what can be accomplished rather than what I'm actually doing, how I'm going about accomplishing that. So again, too, if there's anything you're interested in and maybe you don't have a more technical resource who's familiar with SQL and things like this, you can always reach out to your sales rep and they can get a consultant like myself assigned to help you create these as well. So again, just keep that in mind as I'm going through some more technical stuff here and there. But one other thing I'll go into on the links here as well too is for the sales document num, there's a few different fields that are required for that one. That's gonna be the sales doc num, sales doc type. So it's gonna be like quote order invoice, and also the source field, which is just saying if the document's open or historical. So you can see if I refresh this, technically it's not showing that hyperlink, but once I add in that third field, the source that it's missing, update that again, refresh, and there you go. Now you can see it showing up. So again, just depending on what field you're looking for and what the link is, it's gonna be looking for certain fields named kind of how you're seeing along that format. One other thing we have down here as well too is an auto run feature. So if you set that up, that just means whoever is running the quick report is going to have it automatically load. So you don't have to use this refresh button to load it. So that'd be the equivalent of me coming over here, double clicking on that, and I would have to click refresh to automatically do that. Sometimes it makes sense to do that. Usually if you've got a report that's not pulling in a lot of data, that's a good idea. But if you have a report that's pulling in a lot of data or has search features that you really want your users to fill in first to kind of filter the data before they run it, you're probably not going to want to use that. Beyond that, you have some other stuff as well too. So you can show your auto filter row. So anyone who's not familiar in SalesPad, pretty much all of our grids have an auto filter feature. So that means you can come in here, do show auto filter, and I just right click in any of the column headers, and I could start typing stuff in here. So I could say, maybe I know my quote is 1051, and then I'll do that. But if you want this to automatically pop up without having to go in and do that manually, you can just click that, and there should be doing it. There we go. And sometimes with these changes too, you'll need to use the reset layout button as well to kind of recognize some of these changes. So if you're the one who's going to making these quick report changes, usually you're going to want to let users know the next time they run the report to go in and do that reset layout. So it's kind of helpful too if you're adding in new columns or different formatting changes like that. Then I won't get into the other stuff as much here, just kind of keep moving along. But next we have is the query tab. So like I mentioned, if you're not as familiar with the SQL side of things, if you still want to try and get around and see what you can learn and do on your own, you can use this query builder. That's fine. Let's just say it's basically going to discard everything that I've got right now. Give that a second. It'll give us a new pop-up. It kind of takes a second because essentially it's pulling in a lot of different databases or database tables to go in and reference through this method. So off to the side here, you're going to see a mixture of things of GP tables, SalesPad views, etc. So you can see there is a lot of stuff in here. So usually it kind of depends what I'm looking for. I'll use a lot of SalesPad views when I'm building out queries, just because they're usually more easily named with their how the tables and the fields themselves are named. Some of the GP ones aren't the most user-friendly at time. And I'll have a section about this in a future slide too, but usually any SalesPad view is just starting off with the prefix of SPV. So again, I could say SPV sales, or let's do sales document search. There you go. And there's a few different versions. There's kind of a base version. Light version doesn't have as many fields. Searches a lot of different stuff from the sales document. So I'm going to say we're going to bring in that. That'll throw it over here. And you can see as I'm adding in tables and things to you, it's going to add it over to the SQL section over here, which will eventually be moved over here. And let's say we want to also look at line item information as well too. So I could say SPV sales line search. And then let's just do the base version of that as well, or the light version. And then you can see because we're not bringing in two tables, this kind of gets into SQL stuff. You need to link those tables together so it understands how these are kind of connected. So from the sales document header information, so it's gonna be like your sales document number, document date, requested ship date, customer PO number, all that stuff to the other table, the line items. So it's gonna be all of your items, quantity ordered, unit price, extended costs, and so on. So to connect those, it's just basically saying we want to have the sales doc type equal the sales doc type in the other table. And then the sales document number should also match. Those are usually the two things you're connecting these together on. And how you're connecting these tables is always going to be different or depending on what tables you're bringing in and how those link together to others. But see, those are joined in now. You can see you've got these arrows from the two fields that I connected these tables on. And then you can just choose the fields that you want. So maybe I want the sales doc type and number from here. Maybe I want the document date as well too in sales batch. And maybe for the line items, I want to have the item number, description, unit price, unit cost, etc. So you can see again, as I'm doing this is kind of building it out all over here. And then you can also add things like filters, add parameters, preview results. So I can click that and this is going to show me what I've got so far. Give that a second. This might actually take a little bit longer so I don't have a filter. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's just showing me the first 1,000 rows. So, yep, you can see everything I configured there. It pulls into here. And then I won't get too much further into this, but yeah, again, you add filters, parameters, all sorts of different things like that. And then you click OK. And once that's good, you can click Validate Query. And then you can see everything we configured through that pop-up. It is added in here. So now if I save, update, refresh, this is now showing everything from the query that we just created. So again, if you're not as familiar with SQL, this might be a good tool to use to kind of get your hands in there and start figuring out stuff. Otherwise, I will mention to you as a side note for anyone who does want to learn SQL, there is a website called W3 Schools. If you look for W3 Schools SQL, they have a pretty helpful website. You can kind of go through and it's got all sorts of different SQL commands and functions. They'll give you examples of things as you kind of go through and get through more difficult ones. And you can even try it out yourself and it'll give you like test data to work with. So that's definitely a great tool if you do want to learn more about this stuff yourself. Definitely recommend that. That's a good website. Pretty easy and to the point, as much as it can be. Next we're going to have is the columns tab. So with the columns tab, this is essentially where you can go in and configure how some of these fields are formatted and seen. So for example, you can see the document date fields technically stores the date and the time, but we don't actually update the time side of things, or neither does GP for that. So it just shows as 12 o'clock is kind of the default time. So maybe I want to format this. I only want to see the date. I don't want anything else. So what I can do is come in here, find my document date. I'll just format that doc date as well. And then in the display format, I'm going to do year, month, day. Or actually, that's backwards. Month, day, year. Update that, refresh. Again, I'm going to reset my layout to recognize that change. And there you go. One thing I'll mention too is with these quick reports, these use a software called DevExpress on the back end. So if you're ever trying to find examples of how these should be formatted to kind of set up what you're looking for, usually what you can do is just search in Google like DevExpress month formatting or something like that. And there's usually some kind of user forums out there. They'll have examples. Sometimes I'll look at that and kind of copy things and rework it to how I see fit. So we got that. Sometimes they'll be used for number values too. Sometimes with these fields, they'll be set up where it's technically showing out to 5 decimals, but maybe you only want to see 2 decimals or 1 decimal. So I could go in here, do unit price. Change that. I think it's like this. So let's just do 1 decimal. This is accounting for numbers that go over 1,002 where it'd have a comma in there. So there you go. So you just change that to 1 decimal place. And yeah, again, there's all sorts of different stuff, but good thing to keep in mind. Then we'll get back into some of this other stuff later on, but next we have search fields. So I'm going to delete these default ones we've got in here. So one common one that I usually run into with a lot of quick reports is a date range filter. So let's say you want to look at all documents with a document date between maybe the first of the month to the current day. So what I can do in here is say doc date from, and this is my column, so it's just what I've got up here. Different types of search fields. This one is a date time one. And then search ops, where you're saying kind of is it equal to the value, greater than, less than, and or. I'm just going to say greater than or equal to. And then I'm going to do the same thing. We're just going to do the from as well. And there we go. So now at the top, you can see we've got our from and to. Oops. Yeah, looks like I broke something. Whoops, that's just because I did the same thing for both. I didn't like that. There we go. There, cool. So, yep, again, now I could come in here and say, like, I want to look at all orders with the document date from the 1st of this month to the 31st. Refresh that, and then I'll automatically filter it for you. Nice thing with this too is these can technically be automatically set as well. So if I wanted to, with the SQL option here, I could say maybe I want the from always the default to the 1st of the current month, and I can always change that as needed, but at least I've got some initial filter in there for users. Come in here. So you have a bunch of examples of different SQL queries related to the dates. So I can choose the Monday of last week, current day, Monday of current week, and so on. So I'm just going to do the first day of the current month. Update this. And there you go. You can see it automatically set off that way. So that's kind of nice. These can also be configured too if you want to have a drop-down value. So this is, I really want to change the SQL to kind of get into that, but we're just going to do this here. So I'm doing this off of the sales doc type, but let's say this is actually technically the shipping methods field, and we wanted to do a search on that. And maybe we want to give the user the ability to have a drop down with all of your searching method or search methods possible. So I could change this to a equals. Then for the type, this is actually going to be a lookup. And then in the SQL over here, I'm going to do just select everything from our SPV shipping method SQL view. So this stores all the shipping methods you have configured in GP. update. And then now you can see if I click this drop down, I have all my shipping methods from GP. So that's a great tool. We want to give users the ability to search for a field, but they might not know offhand what all the values are, but it's something that's stored in the database or configured somewhere in GP or SalesPad. You can set that up so you've got that ability to actually choose from your list. Otherwise, too, you can always come in here and use this tool to click on that, and usually that'll give you all the unique values, so you can search on that as well, too. Updates we'll get to a little bit in a second. Scripting is going to be kind of related to that. And then we have some comparisons as well. Let's just jump into a few other things. I know time's going by quickly. So, like I said, quick reports, there's a few different things we can do with them. So one of them we have, it's gonna be a little more technical, is we can reference stored procedures from SQL to populate our data. So sometimes if a quick report is really complicated, there's lots of tables and views and things like that that it's bringing in. Sometimes I'll create a stored procedure in SQL. So with these stored procedures, technically they can do all sorts of things from update records in SQL to pull back data and so on. So I have this set up in SQL where that can be called out. Give me 1 second and I'll pull this up just so you can get an example. It's just a really simple one. So this is just an older one I've created in the past. Second, helps if I search for the right thing. There we go. And for anyone too, again, who's not as familiar, what I'm pulling up here is the SQL Server Management Studio. So this is usually the tool where you're doing a lot of the SQL backend database stuff in. So again, I just have a store procedure here that gets called, and this is pulling in all the information that I'm referencing from this quick report. So again, it might be easier if you've got a really complicated query for how you're pulling in your data, get that all set up here, where you actually have the tools to kind of more easily configure and check how everything's working, and then just call it from the quick report. So that's a great tool and option we've got. One thing as well too that we have is the ability, like I mentioned before, to reference other databases. So anyone who uses our shipping or ship center software, which is an add-on that we have that's used to reach out to carriers like FedEx and UPS for various shipping and rate quoting options. Usually, or sometimes Ship Center can be stored in its own separate database outside of the database or the company database that you log into. So with this quick report here, my Ship Center database is stored outside of that. But by doing this, I'm able to reference it from my database called Ship Center DB and pull in all my information from there. So again, sometimes customers, they have maybe add-on products that are add-ons to GP that are like this with SalesPad that are stored outside of the database, but maybe you still want to be able to reference that information within SalesPad. This is a great way to still pull in that information directly within here. So you don't have to create some kind of report or function that gets emailed outside of everything you're already doing. You just come in here, get your reference, as long as you got access to it, then you're good to go. Another thing I mentioned before are pivot tables that we can do. So you can see here, I've got a pretty simple pivot table I've created, and what this is going to do is show me all of my sales information, I think for the current year, organized by customer and month. So I can see I've got a customer called Test3. Looks like they had some sales orders with a total of $135 in September, 9th month of the year. My Air and Fit customer here, you can see I've got a lot more. And then I've got my grand total over here and totals at the bottom too for each column. So again, depending on what you're looking on, this could be a great tool to maybe more easily visualize the information that you're looking at. I know some customers use our inventory manager software, and one aspect of that is users are picking or fulfilling items on the scanners. And sometimes I've created reports where I'm referencing the audit log table from that. So I'll actually create a report kind of like this so that they can see throughout the day what pickers are picking what quantities or how many orders they've picked within the hour. So again, it's just a nice way to better visualize some information like that. Next we've got here is an updatable quick report. I'm not going to have enough time to kind of get into more complications and how this is set up. So this is definitely one of the more complicated things you can do with quick reports. But with this, there's all sorts of stored procedures and things that get referenced in the report that go to the SQL side of things. but this can actually update or be used to update your records in the database directly in here. So I've got an example where I've got invoices, and maybe I have things where I'll kind of follow up with that customer, see how they're doing and so on. So I can come in here, maybe I've got a follow-up review where I reach out to them, say, yeah, I already have something in here, but maybe say missing quantity of 2 items. You can see I'm able to click in here, while otherwise you just kind of get like that. But once I do that, refresh, give them a rating. Then when I refresh this record, you can see it all stuck in there because what I'm doing here is actually updating these records in the database. So technically these can be done to update all parts of the database, but usually more often what I'll see is these are used to update user-defined fields from SalesPad. It's kind of nice in that way, so there's not as much complexity with what you're updating. So for example, if you're trying to update like fulfillments or something like that, there's gonna be a lot of complexities in terms of what all gets referenced, because there's multiple tables that get referenced for that and allocation process and so on. So usually updating user-defined fields is one of the more quote unquote simpler ways to do this, but again, it's a little trickier. Is usually definitely going to want a Cavallo consultant or someone else to help you out with that. And then over here too, just have an example of some other configuration. So right now I've got a report that looks at sales document line item information. So you can see things like the quantity sold, what your margins are. So you can see I've got it set up now where I've got any negative margins below a certain point. It's going to show up in red. And I think any quantity that's ordered above 20 or 25 is showing up as yellow. So this is a great tool for things like this where maybe looking at margin, you kind of want it to pop out a little more if it's below a certain point. You can come in here. And then I think I've got this set up in the column section. So I can see here for my margin, my conditional formatting here, click that. And it's set up as less than. So if it's less than 0.25, then it's showing up as this light salmon color and showing up in bold. And then kind of same thing over here too. If my quantity is greater than or equal to 25, it's showing up in yellow. And right now it's just making that particular fields highlight yellow, but if I wanted to, I could have that apply to the entire row as well. So refreshing that, it's now showing up for the entire row. And then my other one still gets recognized for this field. So that kind of overrides it in that aspect. So you're still not missing out on any of your other formatting just because this is going across the entire row. Beyond that, we're going to move off to the next section. Because again, I know we're kind of running low on time a little bit. So one of the things to talk about pretty quickly here are dashboards. So these don't get used quite as much in SalesPad, but I feel like there's a lot of value with them. Essentially with dashboards, kind of similar idea of they are referencing your database to pull out various information from sales document information, quotes, vendors, POs, fulfillment, all sorts of stuff. And with these, we can set up things like bar charts, pie graphs, gauges, pivot tables, conditional formatting, geo points, etc. So again, it's a nice way, and you can have also multiple data sets in here. So if you have multiple things that you're wanting to reference of data, you can have it all set up in here as their own little grids. So you can see we've got sales reps over here. Whoops. Yeah, sales reps, current versus previous year, maybe down here, just be looking at the current year. So it's to be a little more difficult, more stuff to get involved, but definitely be worth the effort if you wanted to have more visual representation of your data. And again, maybe look at multiple things. While if you're with your quick reports, you're really only kind of seeing the quick report you're currently working on, which technically you can open up your quick report menu and load it up multiple times and load up different quick reports and kind of go back and forth, or you can always untab your windows and do it that way. But dashboards are pretty good to give you a lot of stuff all in one place. And these can all be controlled through security too, to make sure only designated users are seeing the dashboards that are assigned to them. I've kind of talked about this a little bit earlier on as we we're going through and creating the first quick report. But on the SalesPad side of things, we have our own naming convention on the SQL side of things for how we configure our tables and views in the database. So usually anything that begins with a prefix of SP, just like that, is going to be a SalesPad table. SPV is going to be a SalesPad view. Preference tables and SQL are usually where the actual data is stored. The views are usually kind of bringing in together those tables to have like a more easily accessible place to view the data. So usually bringing in like you're referencing multiple tables at once. SPX is going to be all of our tables for user-defined fields. So that's going to go across to your sales document user-defined fields, inventory, item master ones, customer, and so on. SPP are base stored procedures. Want to be cautious about updating any of those because those changes get wiped out with the SalesPad desktop upgrade or other upgrades beyond that too for SalesPad. SPCP are a custom store procedure, so those will be maintained after your upgrades. And then a few other ones, we got SPWMS if you use Inventory Manager, what's previously known as Data Collection, or SPGPM for SalesPad Mobile. And that is it. Again, it's definitely a lot to quick reports, and there's a lot more I could go into, but that is a pretty quick overview of a lot of different functionality, some of the configuration that goes into it, and all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. And I just want to reiterate what Kevin mentioned a couple times. I know for not all of us are super technical, and SQL can seem pretty intimidating. So if you have ideas of quick reports that might make really good sense for your organization, just let us know. Reach out to your account manager and they can connect you with an implementation specialist, just like Kevin, to help walk you through that process. Kevin, we have gotten some really good questions, so I'm going to start firing away if you're ready.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Awesome. So I'm going to address the first or one that just came in because you just touched on dashboards. Someone is wondering if there will be a demo for dashboards in the future. At this time, we do not currently have a webinar or a demo planned for dashboards. But your input is super important to us. So we will take that as there might be some interest in doing a demo around dashboards, and we will see what we can do for you. So thank you so much for that. Let's see. Most of the questions that came up obviously during the demo. So first one, instead of auto links, can a field contain a link that opens another quick report and also using that link as the parameter for the linked report?
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Let me reread that here real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so, unfortunately. I think that's something that would have to probably be looked into with custom development. Otherwise, I think the links are specific to the things like sales documents and purchase orders and so on, unfortunately. But that would be pretty cool to have.
Okay, good to know. Is there an ERD for the SalesPad database or some sort of view of the metadata like a data dictionary?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you really have. I feel like I've seen some stuff out there when Googling that I've just kind of happened to run into. Otherwise, I think what I showed before with the kind of prefixes and things like that are usually like the best way to kind of track down our tables and views like that. These would definitely be the most common ones that you're going to run into. And I think with SQL too, there's ways you can kind of pull out and say, here's a SQL query to find all tables that start off with SP and so on. But otherwise, I don't think we have anything that I know of off the bat outside of kind of referencing these.
Okay. Yeah, Kevin, if you put a little more thought into that and do discover that we do, we'll definitely send something over. So thank you for that question. One more here. How can you access SQL database entity diagrams showing like tables, fields, relationships?
That's a good question. Not sure if we really have too much for that either. Trying to think, a lot of my knowledge is probably just kind of what I've done in working firsthand with a lot of stuff over time. Trying to think we have too much because I can't remember if you look at the tables if it kind of gives you any of that information. Let me double check here.
Yeah, and if that one's a specific follow-up, we can definitely handle that one too, Kevin.
Yeah, because I'm not sure there's something like that on the SQL side of things in the SQL Server Management Studio where it might give you that. Otherwise, too, sometimes I'll do things like run SQL traces to kind of get a better idea of as I'm running menus, I can kind of see what's happening on the back end to see how those tables and things are linked together. So that's usually something I'll look into if I'm not sure what a particular table is or how that gets linked to the actual data source that it's pulling from or related to.
Okay. Next question, can you upload a spreadsheet and return information for a certain value? So for example, display the invoice number, customer number, etc. for a list of serial numbers that are uploaded.
Mm. Yeah, so with quick reports, there's not really a upload feature. Like I said, there's technically editable or the editable quick reports you can delete, edit, and create new records, so it's not really a whole mass update. But technically on the SQL Server management side of things, I know there are functions where you can reference an Excel sheet. So if you created your own like database table there, you could import it that way. And then from there, you could technically have a quick report referencing that. But there might be an easier way of kind of going about what you're looking for. But that'd be one idea. Otherwise, too, there's always kind of the option of doing like a VLOOKUP in, or maybe using a quick report to pull out a lot of the main information, throw that into a new tab in Excel, and then do a VLOOKUP between the two tabs to kind of figure out what's missing or what is there, isn't there. That's probably how I'd go about it, the easiest way.
Okay, so a couple options there. Can a scripting report update all sales line ship dates from date X to date Y where the doc ID equals Z? So similar to what can be done in mass update.
Let's see. I would think in theory that should be possible because essentially with the updating side of things, how that's done is that references a stored procedure that you'd have to create on the SQL side of things. So technically there are ways you could have that SQL stored procedure configured so it's either doing like an update like that. Because again, you could technically create records, update, delete, and so on. So I think something like that could potentially be done through that method. Just depends how you've got that store procedure set up and what's that up or what that is updating on the SQL side of things.
Okay. What about, here's an easy one, possibly copy and pasting data from quick reports. Is that possible? Copy and
Yeah.
pasting work?
Yeah, so you should be able to, but with that in mind, yeah, because let me do this here. It's a bad example. There you go. So yeah, technically I should be able to come in here, click on that, do a Control C, open up like a notepad or something. And I should be able to paste that. That being said, though, I think there were changes made in the last, I can't remember if it's been more than a year now. Yeah, there you go. So you can see that I'll copy that in there. So that's an option, but again, in previous versions of SalesPad, I can't remember how long it's been now. If you did that, I think it would copy the entire row and kind of throw it in there. So there's a certain point you're made a change where it's actually going to copy out the specific field that you've selected in the quick report. On a side note too, I see there's another question I could probably answer here really quick about, is there any way to get around the SQL timeout when validating queries? With more complex SQL, times out will not validate, which means you can no longer modify your SQL. So that's something I definitely run into as well at times with more complicated ones. Usually for that, the best way that I'll do it is, so right now you can see with this report, I'm pulling in all sorts of sales document information, technically looking all orders. So sometimes in SQL, what you can do, and let me see if I've got my easy one here. There we go. So nice SQL tool you can use is this top value. So by saying select top 10 sales doc numbers and so on, this is only finding the first 10 records. So rather than trying to pull in every single record from my SPV3 sales document, which would be all of my open documents, this works out well. So this is only pulling in the 10. So usually by pulling in a lot less data, it's going to be less likely to run into those timeouts. So usually with all my reports, I'll kind of start off with that until I've got it all set. I've got my filters in there before I'll kind of open it up and take that out to run everything. So that usually helps out a lot.
Cool. Kevin, is it possible to establish a routine to send these reports or dashboards automatically by email?
Yes. So in a newer version of SalesPad, so for anyone who's not familiar, we have an add-on called Automation Agent. There are all sorts of different things that you can kind of filter by, or I'm sorry, that you can perform automations for. So we can do things like automatic batch forwarding. So if you have any sales documents in a designated batch, you can automatically forward them, automatically transfer orders to invoices and so on. But a newer function that we have in newer versions of SalesPad is where is it at? think I'm in the newest one. I should have it. Yeah, I think it's a system user quick report email is what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So got that created here real quick. But essentially with this, and again, automation agents an add-on tool, and this is kind of a newer feature that we've added in the last year or two. But you can kind of come in here, choose your quick report, and you can set this up to go to a list of designated users. Yeah, and this will automatically generate the value from that quick report and automatically email that. I think it sends it out as an Excel file to whatever user set up in here. And with this automation too, you can set this up to run like once every hour, once a day. So maybe like a once a day option, maybe Monday to Friday be a good one. So that's a great tool for being able to do all that stuff.
Cool. We got another vote for a dashboards webinar, so we'll have to take that into consideration, Kevin. Also a question around, do we have a lot of clients who use that dashboard feature via quick reports? Based on your experience, are a lot of people utilizing that feature?
Oh, like the updatable quick reports. It's not something that comes up definitely as often as like non-editable or updatable quick reports, but it's definitely something I run into every, I don't know, every few months or so on. Yeah, like I said, it's helps. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other examples that I've run into where people have done that. I think I had one where it's kind of a more unique case where they had like a whole database outside of SalesPad where it referenced was like purchasing information or kind of ideas once to be purchased. And so they created this whole updatable quick report with a developer on our company or team to basically create this updatable quick report, reference other database to kind of create new records. They could generate it through the purchase order or the purchasing generation tool or purchasing advisor. Sorry, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm remembering it's been a while. But yeah, it's something that doesn't come up increasingly frequent, but it's definitely something that comes up enough times.
Okay. Kevin, if you could go back to that naming convention slide, so I think it was like your second to last slide.
Yeah.
What was the item you said that gets wiped when upgrading SalesPad?
Yeah, so those are going to be the base SalesPad. Did I go past it? There we go. Yeah.
No.
So those are going to be your stored procedures that begin with SPP because those are base SalesPad stored procedures. So as you upgrade to new versions of SalesPad, those technically are getting rewritten to whatever's relevant for that. So usually we don't see customers upgrading those, or even on our side of things, we usually don't, especially with that knowledge that it's going to get wiped out. But there's usually a lot of stored procedures where we can create a custom version of it or an SPCP. So a really common one is there's a SPCP called SPCP sales document report. So with that stored procedure, we can create or add additional data sets to the reports. So when you're going in and creating forms like order reports and invoice reports, we can use the SPCP sales document report to add in new columns of data to populate in the report itself. So that's a good one because it's SPCP. As you upgrade, it's still going to maintain that through the upgrade. But if you did that to the base version of that report, which I think is something pretty similar like SPP sales document report, those changes get wiped out when you upgrade. So again, SPPs generally don't want to upgrade. Sometimes there's reasons to, but not very often, not something you want to do generally.
Thank you for that. Good question. Kevin, we have time for one more. I will mention again, we're getting seeing a lot of passion around the dashboards webinar. So lots of votes here. I love it. Last question. Can an account activity report for sales be created showing payment and credit application? So to clarify, like specify to which invoice payments or credits are applied.
Yeah, that should be possible. I feel like I just did something like that recently. Please double check here. Yeah, I'm blanking on what the like customer AR detail or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, no worries. And if we need to do a follow-up with Kathy, we can totally do that.
Yeah, so I think it'd be something like this. There's a view, and this again, this is the SalesPad view, so this is pulling from base GP tables for this. There's like a customer AR detail, and I think this is usually keeping track of things like payments, and I think debit and memo or debit and credit memos and so on are tracked in here. So I think that might have some of the information you'd be looking for. But again, too, as long as it's something that's stored in the database, which usually it is for a lot of these transactions, it's just tracking down what the table is and then referencing that report, and then you should be able to kind of bring that to life from there.
Awesome. Alrighty, we are going to wrap things up. We've had a lot of questions, which we love. We thank everyone for your time and asking questions and your interest in this topic. Again, we're also thrilled that we've gotten an idea for a new topic around dashboards. So thanks again for joining us. We hope to see everyone next month on June 20th. For a webinar dedicated fully to our EDI integration with our friends over at SBS Commerce. So don't miss your chance to learn how to take advantage of the powerful integration to streamline your EDI processes and successfully run a thriving multi-channel sales system. If you'd like to explore your organization's specific needs further or have any questions about what you heard today, go ahead and reach out to your account manager. If you're not familiar with who that might be, you can easily scan this QR code here on the screen. It'll take you to a really short form. Jot down your question, let us know how we can help you, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Last but not least, there's going to be a survey when you exit the webinar. It's just 3 questions long. It should take you probably 30 seconds. Again, we really, really appreciate the feedback. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope everyone has a great rest of your week. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, all.